The first thing you learn is the silence. Not the kind you hear in the countryside, where birds murmur and leaves rattle. No, this is the silence of graveyards at 2 in the morning, soaked through with fog so thick it swallows breath. It's a silence that waits, that watches, that seems to press in close when your shovel touches dirt. And your shovel will touch dirt, because it's not really about what you want. You're here because the man known only as Cutter told you the price of a body. 30 shillings for something fresh. 40 if the hands are unmarked. He's the kind of man whose coat smells of brine and wax, and who never looks you straight in the eye. But his money is real, and more importantly, so are the surgeons who pay him. You thought it would be simple. You thought grave robbing, resurrection work, they call it with a grin, was just digging. In and out, quick, dirty money, romantic even. You didn't think about how deep a grave goes. You didn't think about wet earth, or wood that creaks, or skin that still remembers how to look back. But it's too late for second thoughts now. The spade feels wrong in your hands. Not like a tool, like a weapon. The handle is slick with cold, your coat is too thin. And your breath, clouding the lantern's glow, makes it harder to see the marker stone. Cutter doesn't help. He smokes a pipe and hums a tune that sounds like something you shouldn't hum at a cemetery. He doesn't touch the shovel. That's your job. You're the young blood, the fresh arms. You're the one who has to make it to the box while he watches. The digging is harder than you expected. Earth in stories comes up soft and light. This earth, it clings, it sucks. It moans when you pull the spade free. Every thrust sends aches down your back, your hands blister, your knees sink in mud. And all the while, Cutter keeps humming. You're halfway, he says after what feels like an hour. He spits on a tombstone. Best part comes next. When your spade finally hits wood, the sound jolts you like a slap. You freeze. Cutter leans in. Tap again. You do. Dull. Hollow. The coffin's here. He grins. Now the real work. You thought you'd just open it. Pull the body out. You didn't realize coffins aren't made to be opened again. That the nails are long. That the seams are tight. That wood turns to iron in the damp. Cutter hands you a crowbar. Mind the face, he says. Teeth are worth a bonus. You hesitate. That's when the smell hits you. It's not rot. Not yet. Not fully. It's something between sweat and river mud and candle wax. A human smell, twisted by time. You feel it coat your throat. Your stomach rolls. You don't vomit, but only because there's nothing left in you. Get on with it, Cutter says. So you do. The lid gives with a screech. Splinters fly. Your lantern flickers, and inside, there she is. A woman, barely 30 by the look. Black hair, pale skin already going slack. Lips parted, eyes mercifully shut. A white burial shroud, damp at the edges. Flowers once tucked under her hands now brown and curling. You reach in with shaking arms. She's heavier than you thought. And colder. So much colder. Cutter grabs her feet. You take the shoulders. Together you hoist her out of the coffin, wrap her in canvas, and tie the cords tight. The shape is unmistakable. Human, female, dead. Your heartbeat won't slow. She do, Cutter says. You try not to think about what doing means. You try not to imagine the surgeon peeling back her skin, measuring her bones, removing her organs like a butcher. You try not to think of her name, because the marker was worn smooth, and you never asked. You just want it over. You replace the soil as best you can. Flatten it. Make it look untouched. Cutter says no one checks the poor plots anyway. When the lantern goes out, you both walk by moonlight. The sack bounces against your back. You swear it shifts. But you don't look. At the edge of the graveyard, Cutter claps you on the shoulder. You've got stomach, not bad, you nod. He leans in. But wait till next time. Winter's coming. That's when they freeze solid. He laughs. You don't. You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber. Because it's not about guts or grit. It's about how long you can carry the dead before something starts to carry you back. The dead woman rides across your back like a curse. The sack is heavy, but it's more than just weight. It's the knowledge of what you're carrying. Her body knocks against your spine with each step, and though the canvas is tight and your hands are numb from strain, it still feels like her fingers twitch, like she might be holding on. Cutter walks ahead with the lantern, and you're glad he does. You don't want to see her shadow on the ground. The fog clings tighter as you leave the cemetery behind. The road is little more than a slick channel of mud, and your boots suck with every step. The sounds of London at night rise faintly in the distance. Horse hooves, shouting, the faint whistle of a drunkard's tune. Life, but not for you. Not tonight. Cutter stops before a crooked iron gate, half swallowed by vines. Beyond it, a stone building crouches low behind a crumbling wall. No signs, no lanterns. Just windows like eyeless sockets, watching. He knocks on the gate 3 times, then once more, then twice. The door creaks open before the last knock lands. The man who greets you isn't a doctor by appearance. He's too young, too clean. He wears gloves that haven't seen mud and boots that shine faintly, even in the dim light. But Cutter calls him doctor, and that's enough for you. Bring her in, the doctor says, not looking at you. The interior smells like boiled linen and old rust. The floors are black with soot and sawdust. The walls, stone, sweat-stained. And the table in the center? Iron, sloped, with a channel to drain. You've seen butchers use cleaner slabs. The doctor gestures without speaking. You lower the sack. He pulls a small blade, more silver than steel, and slices the cords. With a flick of his wrist, the canvas opens, and she is unwrapped like meat for market. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't pause. He simply observes. Good teeth, he mutters. Minimal swelling, no signs of infection. Then he lifts her eyelids with his gloved fingers. You look away. Cutter is already pouring himself a drink from the doctor's sideboard, some pale spirit that smells like polish. You don't ask for any. Your stomach still turns. The doctor stands. Should do, 35, 40, Cutter says. She's fresh. The doctor looks at you, then back at the corpse. 38. They shake hands, and you realize she's not a person anymore. She's a price. Cutter hands you your share, 15 shillings in a leather pouch that smells of old meat. He's generous by resurrectionist standards, but you don't feel richer. You feel like you've traded a part of yourself for coins that won't warm your hands. As you turn to leave, you glimpse the doctor preparing his tools. Long, thin knives, small saws, a hook. He hums softly, something tuneless, as he lines them on the tray. You want to leave before he starts. You don't want the sounds to follow you into dreams. You make it to the door, but then he speaks. You'll be back, he says. You stop. I've seen your kind. The first time's the worst. But then it gets easier. You get used to it. Then you need it. You shake your head. I'm done, he smiles. Then why didn't you ask her name? Outside, the fog is thicker. The gate creaks closed behind you. Cutter disappears down the alley without a word. You walk home alone. The street lamps are few and far between, and in their flickering halos, your breath curls like smoke. Your hands still smell like her skin. You pass a churchyard. You see the stones. And you wonder how many are already empty. You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber. Because it's not just the dead that get buried. Sometimes it's your conscience. And sometimes that never quite stays down. You don't remember deciding to go back, not really. There was no moment you said, yes, I'll desecrate another grave. It just happened. One day passed, then another, and soon your fingers no longer trembled when you touched the shovel. The smell of earth stopped bothering you. The heaviness in your chest, that old bone-deep guilt, faded like a bruise. You tell yourself it's just the money. And when that lie stops working, you stop asking questions entirely. But you never go back to the doctor's house alone. That place lingers behind your eyes, especially the humming. You still don't know what it was, a hymn, a lullaby, or something older. Something wrong. Instead, Cutter offers you new work. Different buyer, he says. Wants specimens, doesn't ask questions. That should have been a warning, but you're used to ignoring warnings by now. And so, one fog-drenched Wednesday evening, you find yourself in the cellar of a burned-out apothecary behind Bishopsgate, watching Cutter pry open a trapdoor with the heel of his boot. The cellar smells like vinegar and dead paper. Once, it might have held herbs and tinctures. Now it holds rot. The walls are flaking with salt and ash. Black mold blooms like wounds in the corners. The lantern casts long shadows that don't seem to line up with your own. Beneath the trapdoor lies a tunnel lined in ancient brick, thick with cobwebs and the odor of forgotten things. You follow Cutter down the slippery steps, your boots clanging against iron rungs slick with condensation. How far does this go? You ask. Cutter shrugs. Long enough to matter. He carries a small handcart. Inside, there's a hacksaw, a coil of rope, and a burlap sack already half filled with straw. That means the client expects more than one. You don't ask who he is. You've stopped wanting to know. The tunnel opens into what was once a crypt, maybe Roman, maybe older. There are symbols scratched into the stones that aren't from any Bible you've read. The ceiling drips. Bones poke from the mortar like crooked fingers. The damp has a pulse. There are two others waiting in the dark, not doctors. Not surgeons, grave thieves. Men with hoods, hard eyes, and the look of dogs who've forgotten what it means to walk upright. One carries a crowbar. The other smells like ammonia and watches you too long. New blood? One says, glancing your way. Cutter nods. Hasn't flinched yet. You hate how proud you feel. Like you've earned that. They bring out a map, a charcoal sketch of a graveyard 3 blocks north, behind a crumbling workhouse. Unmarked plots. Mostly beggars, the perfect kind, the kind no one visits. No one misses. You learn the plan. Break in through the rear fence. 3 bodies, one still warm, a suicide, buried quick without rights. She'll fetch best, one of them mutters, licking his teeth. You realize he means it literally. The job starts quietly. You're the digger again. You prefer it that way. It gives you something to do with your hands, something to focus on besides the shifting fog, the way the statues seem to watch, the sense that something beneath the ground might be listening. You dig fast, too fast. You hit the coffin hard and splinter the lid. Careful, hisses one of the men. Last time someone cracked a jaw, the client made him swallow the teeth. You slow down. The coffin is shallow. The body is thin. A boy, maybe 12, with no shoes and a mouth still open, like he died screaming. You hesitate, but Cutter is already wrapping the legs. The others move on to the next grave. You look at the boy again. His hands are tied with ribbon, red, unusual. You don't mention it. By the 3rd grave, the air changes. It thickens as if the fog itself has sunk into the ground. Your ears pop. The silence grows sharp, like the moment before lightning. The coffin is older, wood turned black, eaten through in places. Moss covers the cross nailed to the lid. The others hesitate. Cutter frowns. This isn't on the list. One of the grave thieves leans close, eyes glinting. That's not our problem. The coffin creaks open. There's no body. Just a single leather sack, stitched shut with copper wire. And the smell, not of death, but of rot long forgotten. It smells like wet parchment, burnt feathers, and something that makes your nose bleed. The man with the crowbar reaches for the sack. Cutter grabs his arm. Leave it. The man laughs. What's wrong, Cutter? Gone soft. He lifts the sack. It moves. You don't run right away. You just step back. Then another. The shadows behind the trees seem to stretch. The fog thickens until you can barely see your hands. The man who took the sack begins coughing, then screaming. He drops to his knees, clawing at his chest. His mouth opens wide, impossibly wide, and something black spills out, like soot or wings or both. It doesn't fall. It rises. You run. You don't wait for the others. You don't check on Cutter. You don't even remember where the path is. You run until your legs give out, until your knees are bleeding and your lungs taste of copper. When you finally stop, it's morning, and you're alone. You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber, because there are rules beneath the soil, and some coffins are locked for a reason. You avoid Cutter for 3 nights. You don't sleep, not really. You lie in the corner of your flat, where the moonlight doesn't reach, and listen. Not for footsteps or constables or rats. No, you listen for that black fluttering thing. The one that poured from the grave like smoke with wings. You never saw where it went. You don't want to know. When sleep does take you, it drags you down like drowning. You dream of shrouds that breathe and coffins that knock back. You wake with dirt under your nails, though you haven't touched a spade in days, and then Cutter comes knocking. You know it's him by the rhythm, 3 quick raps, too slow. The same rhythm he tapped on the coffin that wasn't his to open. You almost don't answer. But you do. He stands in the doorway, water dripping from his hat brim. He doesn't ask how you've been. He doesn't apologize. Just says, "We've got a call from the woman on Prince's Row. She's paying double." You don't want to ask why, but of course you do. Cutter shrugs. She wants her husband back. The house on Prince's Row isn't like the others. It's too clean, too quiet. The windows are shuttered, but the gaslights inside burn steady and gold. There's a carriage out front, polished, expensive, empty. No driver. The horse stands still as stone. Cutter doesn't knock. He just opens the door. Inside, the house smells like lavender and mold. Every surface gleams with polish. Mirrors line the hallway, but none reflect the lantern properly, as if they remember different rooms, older nights. She waits for you in the sitting room. The widow. She wears gray silk and black gloves, and her mouth curves into a smile that never touches her eyes. She offers you tea. You decline. Her hands never stop moving, folding a handkerchief, adjusting a flower, twisting her ring, always doing something small and slow, like her fingers are afraid of stillness. "I want him whole," she says, face untouched, hands preserved. He had lovely hands. Cutter names a price. She doubles it. You try to meet her gaze. You fail. Before you leave, she presses a small brass bell into your palm. "Bury this with him," she says. "He'll hear it." You don't ask what she means. The cemetery is on the edge of the city, where the smoke thins, but the air is no cleaner. The man's name was Alistair Hemsley, died 6 days ago. Pneumonia, Cutter says. No infection. No autopsy. Buried fast per her request. The grave is shallow, fresh. The earth practically invites you in. You dig slowly, not out of caution, out of dread. Every scrape of your spade brings that bell to mind. The way it felt in your palm, the strange heat of it. By the time you reach the coffin, your arms ache and your breath comes in steam. Cutter clears his throat. "Let's be quick. I don't like this one." Neither do you. The lid is nailed shut as always. Cutter pries it loose. The wood groans like something exhaling. Inside lies Alistair Hemsley. He looks too intact, too still. His beard is freshly trimmed. His suit pressed. His shoes shine like he's on his way to a gala. You don't want to touch him. You do anyway. You place the bell on his chest like she asked. The moment it touches the fabric, it rings. Not loud, not sharp. Just a soft chime, like silver spun through air. Cutter freezes. You both stare. The bell rings again. Then again. 3 soft chimes. Ding, ding. And then Hemsley exhales. You fall backward. clawing at the dirt. Your lantern skitters into the grave, spilling oil, flames flickering madly. Cutter curses, grabbing your collar to pull you back. But the body doesn't move. The bell lies silent on the dead man's chest, and yet, his mouth is open now. It wasn't before. You both stare for what feels like hours. Then Cutter spits into the grave and mutters, "Not our problem." But it is, because when you wrap the corpse and lift him from the coffin, he's still warm. And the bell you buried with him, is no longer there. You return to the house just before dawn. She's waiting in the parlor, sipping tea that doesn't steam. Her eyes brighten when she sees the wrapped body. You lay it on the floor. Cutter takes his coin. You linger. "Why the bell?" you ask. She smiles. "So he won't forget where to return." You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber. Because sometimes the dead aren't finished with you. And sometimes their wives aren't either. You tell yourself you'll stop, that this was the last job, that you've had enough, that you'll go back to sweeping floors, hauling crates at the docks, anything but this. And then the rent is due. The coins Cutter gives you are always real, always cold, always just enough to keep the walls from closing in. And so you find yourself, 3 nights after the widow's bell stopped ringing, descending a staircase in a Whitechapel alley where the bricks sweat and the rats walk in silence. The place below isn't a cellar. Not exactly. It's older than the buildings above it. The steps feel worn from more than just boots. They feel smoothed by centuries of fear. At the bottom, a lantern glows behind a sheet of dirty canvas. This is the market, and it never closes. You pass beneath the canvas and into a room that smells like pickled things that weren't meant to be pickled. The walls are lined with jars. Some hold frogs. Some hold fetuses. Some, you're not sure. Pale, root-like tangles that float in amber fluid, twitching without wind. Eyes, tongues. In one, you swear you see a tiny human hand giving a thumbs up. The man who runs this place doesn't have a nose. It's not just missing, it's scooped, as if someone carved it out like the heart of an apple. A leather strap runs across his face to keep the goggles in place. His voice is muffled, as if it bubbles up from his throat through oil. "You're Cutter's friend," he says. You don't reply. He gestures to the back of the room, where something large is covered with a stained sheet. You think it might be a body. You hope it's a statue. "We're looking for something special," the man continues. "Child-sized, preserved, minimal decay. Brain intact." You flinch. He notices. "You've brought worse." You don't answer. You don't argue. Because he's right. That night, you and Cutter break into a pauper's hospital slated for demolition. The windows are nailed shut, and the corridors smell like dried blood and lime. Somewhere inside, pipes gurgle even though the building hasn't had running water in months. You find the body in the abandoned nursery. A girl, maybe 10. Her skin is waxy, her cheeks sunken. No sign of trauma, no name tag, no record, no grieving parents. She lies beneath a yellowed blanket in a bed too small even for her. Cutter doesn't speak. He just nods. The bag you use is smaller this time, and worse for it. You carry her out like contraband. Like shame. And you never forget how light she was. Back in the market, the noseless man inspects her like meat. He pulls back her eyelids, checks her gums, taps her skull. He hums softly, like he's trying to guess the tune of a broken lullaby. "She do," he mutters. "Take your coins from the box." Cutter grabs the pouch without hesitation. You linger. There's something in the air here, not just mold and brine. Something that presses against your lungs like smog made of secrets. You walk past the jars again, and this time you see something new. A child, not in a jar. In a cage, in the back corner, barely lit, sits a wrought iron enclosure. Low, rusted, wrong. Inside, something moves. Slowly, breathing, watching. It's not dead. It's not alive. It's something in between. You step closer. The noseless man hisses. You didn't see that. You believe him. You leave the market with coins in your coat and a question in your chest. It burns. Worse than guilt. Worse than fear. It's the realization that what you're doing doesn't end with death. Because now you've seen what comes after. And it isn't peace. You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber. Because the worst thing in a jar isn't always the corpse. Sometimes it's the part of you that watched and didn't look away. You spend the next week scrubbing your boots with vinegar and lye. It doesn't help. The smell of that market won't come off. Not from your clothes, not from your skin, not from inside your teeth. And when you sleep, you dream of jars, so many jars, filled with parts that blink, that breathe, that remember. You start avoiding your reflection. Your own eyes look too familiar now, as if something inside you has joined the rest of what you've dug up. And then, just when you think the air might clear, Cutter comes to you with a name, St. Agatha's Chapel. I know a man there, he says, a priest, kind of. You don't ask how a priest is in the resurrection business. You're past asking anything anymore. St. Agatha's isn't a church anymore. It hasn't been for years. The cross is rusted, the steeple shattered, and the windows are just jagged black teeth, open to the sky. It sits on a hill like a wound no one's tried to heal. The gate is rusted half open. Weeds have won the war here. Even the crows don't bother with it. Inside, it's colder than outside. The stone floor is cracked and slick with mildew. The air smells like candle wax and something dry. You can't explain it. Dry the way bones are dry. Hollow, rattling, the priest waits behind the altar. He wears a collar and a butcher's apron. Got something for you, Cutter says. The priest smiles. It's a sharp smile. She's in the back, he says. Still fresh. The back room is colder. Somehow, the candles here are long dead, but there's still light, pale greenish light that leaks in from a hole in the roof and lands on the table in the center. A woman lies there, white dress, black boots, pale as marble. She doesn't look sick. She looks asleep. She was buried yesterday, the priest says. Suicide. They didn't dig deep. Ground's too hard this season. You look closer. She's young. Too young. Barely 20, maybe. Her eyes are closed. Her hands are folded over her chest, and a silver locket dangles from her fingers. You don't want to know what's inside. You don't want to know anything. But of course, you have to carry her. You carry her all the way back to the cart outside the chapel. Cutter whistles the entire time. The priest watches from the broken threshold, hands folded, as if seeing you off for a funeral in reverse. You load her body onto the cart. That's when you hear it. Knock, not loud, not urgent, but unmistakable. You both freeze. Knock. It comes again. From inside the cart. Cutter swears, yanks back the tarp. The body lies still, but the locket, it's open now. And her hands have shifted. You don't speak for the entire ride back. Cutter pretends not to notice, but he doesn't whistle anymore. The body goes to a different buyer this time. A professor with yellowed gloves and eyes like candle flame. His study is filled with jars of ash and diagrams of stars. He doesn't ask how long she's been dead. He just smiles and says, "She's the one." You hand her over. And as he closes the door, you hear music, a music box. You swear it's coming from her chest. You don't sleep that night. You sit by the fire with a bottle of gin and your coat still on, waiting for something to knock, but nothing does, until dawn. That's when you hear it, scratch from under the floorboards. You press your ear to the ground, scratch, scratch. You tear the planks up with your bare hands. There's nothing underneath, but your boots are covered in soil. Fresh soil. You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber, because the earth remembers what you take, and sometimes it sends it back. The nights get longer, or maybe it's just your shadow stretching behind you like it's trying to slip free. You don't go outside without gloves now. Not because of the cold, but because the blood won't come out of your nails anymore. No matter how hard you scrub, no matter what you soak them in, there's a tint deep under the skin that only death gives. You tell yourself you're just tired, that the knocking, the scratching, the whispering hum at the edge of your dreams, it's all stress. And then you meet the baker's boy. He's no more than 15. Still has flour in his eyelashes and a crooked smile that says he's never seen the things you have. But he's fast. Good with locks. Doesn't flinch when a rat runs across a corpse's ribs. Cutter calls him a protege. Says it's good to have someone smaller for the tight spaces. You wonder if he'll survive the month. Your job tonight takes you under a decommissioned hospital east of Clockenwell. The kind that once held plague victims, then syphilitics, then orphans. Always the kind no one comes looking for. The floorboards upstairs have rotted to lace. The smell is sharp, not rot, but something older, medicinal, bitter, and beneath it, mildew, decay, and ammonia. You step carefully, each footfall creaking like a lie. The boy finds the trapdoor first. Found it, he whispers, crouched beside a stack of rusted pans. His fingers, too clean, brush away the dust to reveal iron hinges. You pry it open together. The air that rises is too warm, too sweet, like meat gone wrong. Below is a corridor carved straight through brick and bone. Literal bone. You see femurs stacked like masonry in the wall, skulls peering out like mourners too late for the wake. The passage narrows, then widens again into a crypt. And in the center, a table. It's not a coffin. It's a table, wooden, blackened with something you tell yourself is just time. On it rests a box, wooden, unlocked. Cutter doesn't come with you. He waits above. You and the boy step forward. The box isn't large. Maybe the size of a suitcase. There's no inscription, no ornament. Just a small iron latch. You hesitate. The boy doesn't. He flips it open. Inside is a pile of human teeth. You expect gold. You expect rot. You don't expect the organization. They're arranged in rows, labeled with inked vellum slips, dates, initials, a few with no tags, just notches carved into the enamel, symbols you've seen before. On graves, on doors, in dreams. The boy touches one and screams. You pull him back. His hand is bleeding. A single tooth now lodged deep in the pad of his thumb, as if it bit him. You yank it free. Blood spills onto the floor. That's when the humming starts. Low, hollow, like air moving through dead lungs. Then, movement. From beneath the box, something shifts. Rattles. A long, slow creaking that's not wood. You lift the box, hand trembling. Underneath it lies a single bone. Too long for a human femur. Too thin for an animal. It curves like it wants to move. And etched deep along its side is a series of symbols. Glyphs, runes, something deeper than language. You recognize none of them. And all of them. Because you've seen them before, in the corners of your eyes, carved into the teeth of a skull that smiled back, in the smudges left behind your mirror when no one had touched it. The boy whimpers. Let's go. But your feet won't move. The bone hums. Then it cracks. Loud. Sharp. And from the crack leaks not blood, but dust. Black, glittering dust. The boy runs. You stay 1 second too long. And the dust breathes. You stumble out blind, eyes burning. You don't remember the ladder, or Cutter grabbing your coat and pulling you up, or the boy sobbing in the snow. You just remember the noise the bone made when it cracked. It sounded like something waking up. You never speak of the box. Cutter doesn't ask. But that night, he hands you something wrapped in wax paper. For the nerves, he says. Inside, a single molar. Yours. You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber, because the dead don't need their teeth. But sometimes they remember who took them. You swear you'll never work with Cutter again. You say it out loud this time, to yourself. to the cracked mirror in your flat, to the bottle on the floor that listens better than anyone else. But 3 days later, he's at your door with a cigar in his teeth and a key in his palm. "You ever been to Mayfair?" he asks. "Because tonight we're robbing art." You should say no. Instead, you ask, "What kind of art?" The museum's not really a museum, not officially. By day, it's a curiosity shop for wealthy ladies with too much laudanum and not enough God. They come to gawk at shrunken heads, Roman coins, a locket said to belong to Anne Boleyn, all fake, all priced like relics. But at night, the upper floor opens, to a select few. That's where the wax figures are. That's where the real money is. Cutter's contact is a night watchman with a limp and one cloudy eye. Says the owner wants to sell quietly, but can't risk scandal. One of the exhibits is too real, he says. Keeps bleeding through the mold. Wants it gone before someone investigates. You ask if it's human. The watchman grins. Not anymore. You enter through the back. A coal chute straight into the basement. The wax gallery is 3 floors up, but already the air smells sweet and wrong, like perfume masking something sour. The museum is silent, and your footsteps echo as if you're being followed by someone who walks just behind the moment. You reach the door to the exhibit hall. The key clicks. The latch turns. You step inside. And all at once, you are watched. The figures line the walls, dukes and pirates and pharaohs and saints, each more detailed than the last. The expressions aren't frozen. They're suspended, caught mid-thought, mid-breath, as if some part of them is still considering what they'll say next. Their eyes shine too weightly. Their hair smells too real. And the skin, not wax, not really, something softer. Something you know. Cutter doesn't care. He moves like a butcher through a meat stall, checking joints, inspecting condition. He stops at the last figure. "She's the one," he mutters. It's a woman in a morning gown, tall, pale. Her mouth is slightly open. Her hands are folded, but something about them is wrong. The fingers bent too tightly, too deliberately, as if hiding something. There's a plaque at her feet. You read it. Recovered from a private crypt. Identity unknown. Skin preserved by unknown method. Believed to be from the early 1700s. Heart missing. Cutter's already lifting her by the arms. And that's when the lights go out. Not slowly, not in stages. They snap. Darkness slams shut like a coffin lid. Your lantern flickers. Cutter swears. The woman's body slumps suddenly, heavier now. Her head rolls backward. Her mouth widens. And from inside, you hear a sound, laughter, not loud. Not cheerful, dry, croaking, mocking. Your legs don't move. Cutter drops the body. It hits the floor with a wet thud. Wax, or what you thought was wax, cracks, peels, splits. Beneath it, skin, gray, paper thin, still smiling. Her heart may be gone, but her teeth are not. They're black, all of them. And they're moving. You drag Cutter out by his coat. Neither of you speaks as you bolt through the gallery. The wax figures look different now. Closer to the walls, faces turned slightly in your direction. You don't check the plaque again. You don't want to know if yours is already there. You get her to the cart. You set her on fire. Cutter lights the match. You douse her with oil. The flames bloom, hungry and bright. She doesn't scream. She laughs, all night. In the morning, there's no body, just a scorch mark on the cart. And a single tooth. It isn't black anymore. It's yours. You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber. Because some things are never meant to be preserved. And some wax never melts. The rain begins 2 hours before dusk and doesn't stop for 3 days. It isn't the sharp, stabbing kind. No thunder, no lightning, no drama. Just a steady, bone-soaking curtain of water that turns streets to sludge and fogs the windows of every tenement in Shoreditch. Gutters overflow, graves swell, coffins rise. And so do the jobs. Cutter shows up soaked to the knees, coat dragging, hat ruined. with a canvas bag under one arm and a bottle of gin under the other. "South Grove's washing loose," he says. "They're coming up by themselves now. You shouldn't go." You go. The cemetery is a lake now. A bog of tilted stones and knee-deep muck. The caretaker's hut sits abandoned, its door swinging on one rusted hinge. The iron fence leans in like the whole graveyard's trying to whisper something. You wade in with Cutter ahead. He knows the ground better than you. He knows which crypts flood first, which family plots were cheaply sealed, which ones might offer something rare. Tonight's prize is a doctor. Died 1802. Buried with a golden tongue depressor and a silver rib saw, if the records are right. Which they never are. You find the plot half submerged. Cutter pulls out a pry bar. You notice the water's still rising. You dig with numb hands. The grave is shallow. Poor soil, swollen with rot. It stinks. Sweet, like overripe apples. Cutter says it means the body's ready. You don't want to know what that means. Then the coffin cracks, and something inside hisses. Not gas, not air. Breath. Cutter freezes. You shine the lantern down. The lid shifts, not from your movement, but on its own. Slowly, gently, like someone opening it from the inside. And then you hear it. Slosh, not from the grave. From behind you, you whirl around. A man stands at the cemetery gate. No coat, no lantern, just a black suit, soaked through. His face is obscured by a porcelain mask. Expressionless, smooth, unpainted. The kind worn in old masquerades or death rituals in the countryside. He doesn't speak. He raises one hand. Not to wave, to point, directly at you. You look to Cutter. He's gone. You run. You don't think. Don't check where. The cemetery blurs. Graves become waves. Iron fences twist like branches. Somewhere behind you, footsteps slap water, slow and even, never hurrying. Always closing. You reach the caretaker's hut. You bar the door. You hide beneath the desk. And you wait. Minutes pass. Then hours. You don't know anymore. The rain drums on the roof. The window fogs. The stink of wet earth clings to the walls. And then silence. No rain. No steps. Just a quiet too deep to trust. You crawl out. The door stands ajar. Outside, the graves are still flooded. But the man is gone. Except there's something on the desk. Not a note. Not a tooth. A mirror. Small, oval, silver-framed. You pick it up and see your face. Except you're wearing the mask. You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber. Because the dead don't all lie still. And some things come to bury you. You've stopped counting the nights. Or maybe you started counting only them, not by days anymore, but by what came up through the ground. The weeks blur like old ink, washed over by something darker. London hasn't gotten quieter, just further away. The fog isn't lifting. The earth isn't settling. And your hands won't stop trembling. You haven't seen Cutter since the cemetery. He left a sack on your doorstep 3 days ago. Inside was money. And a skull. You don't open the sack for hours. You sit beside it, like it's a dog that might bite, staring while the lamp gutters lower and lower until the shadows have more shape than the furniture. When you finally unwrap the cloth, the bones are clean, too clean, polished, bleached. The teeth are all present. But one is black, one. And behind that black tooth, tucked just between the jaw and the hinge, is something folded, paper. You remove it with tweezers. It's a torn page from a ledger. Dates, names, body weights, conditions. All crossed out but one, yours. And next to it, not a check mark, not a cross, but a circle. A perfect, empty circle. You take the skull to the anatomist. You've never learned his name. No one has. He doesn't give one. He doesn't speak unless it's Latin, and even then, only under breath, like he's afraid the words might listen. His shop is buried in a back alley off Fleet Street, behind a butcher and beneath a tailor. You descend through a trapdoor in the cobblestone and arrive in a room made of glass jars and yellowing books. Bones everywhere, bones and wires and threads. He takes the skull without question. He doesn't ask how you got it. He just sets it down under the lamp, turns the mandible, and sighs. Loquitur, he whispers. It means, it speaks. You want to ask what it says, but before you can, the skull laughs. You freeze. The anatomist doesn't. He starts writing, furiously. Line after line, page after page, as if transcribing a confession from a voice that hasn't existed in centuries. The skull rocks slightly on its base, teeth clicking together like prayer beads. You back away. It turns. Only slightly, just enough for its black tooth to face you. The anatomist stops writing, looks up. His eyes are wrong. Not afraid, not confused. Something else, grateful, and he says, "It knows your name." You run again. Through the trapdoor, through the alley, through the muck of London narrowing around you like a throat. Back to your room, your cot, your coat hook, your desk. But something's changed. The door is locked from the inside. You don't remember doing that, but you did, didn't you? The lamp's already lit. The ledger is open. You don't own a ledger. You pick it up. It's full. Name after name, each one scratched out, except yours. That circle again. Still empty. You sit. You take up the pen beside it. You think, maybe, if you cross it out, it'll all stop. Maybe you can undo something. But when you go to write, your hand refuses. It just won't. Instead, it turns the page, blank, and starts writing. Not your words, not your hand, but it moves anyway. And you realize you've become the voice now, the one someone else will hear. You wouldn't last a day as a 19th century grave robber, because the dead don't stay dead. The bones remember names. And yours was written down long ago.